It's 8:05 on a Tuesday, July 1st. We are halfway through the year. Man, it is cliche to say, I know, Bill O'Reilly's going to kill me after his rant against cliches yesterday. But it is flying by. I'm sorry, Bill. I'm sorry, buddy, but it really is. I feel like Inauguration Day was like 6 weeks ago at this point. So I was thinking about this last night as we hit the halfway mark of the year. I said, let me put together my top 3 highs and top 3 lows from the first 6 months of the year. I'll do this right now for the national stories, and then at 9:05, I'll give you the highs and the lows for Kansas City area stories. I didn't want to combine them. There's just too much that's happened in 2025 so far. So my top 3 highs from a national news perspective so far this year. Number 1 would be, well, you know what it's going to be, right? Inauguration Day.
Such a nice man.
That's right. Inauguration Day 2025 for the President of the United States was a multi-year culmination of a guy who we thought 4 years prior was done politically based on how his first term ended. And then he fights off, indictments. He fights off literally bullets. He fights off a switcheroo by the opposing party. And he ends up winning in what we would call today, in these political times where it's a 50-50 country, a landslide election, winning the popular vote, which had not been done by a Republican in 20 years since George W. Bush. And he swept all 7 swing states. And then he ends up, of course, getting into office earlier this year in January during Inauguration Day. We had a great watch party that took place at Ray's Cafe on what was a very cold day, as I recall. But we had an outstanding time, and that to me was just one of the great highlights of the first 6 months of this year. Second on that list, I'm going to say it's what happened just 2 Saturdays ago, and that is the success of the B-2 bombers. Yes, there's a local tie to this, but this is obviously a national and global story where these B-2 bombers fly out of Whiteman, 37-hour round trip, peeing in bags, eating hot dogs, the whole thing. And they pull off what we now know to be a successful strike on 3 Iranian nuclear sites. Now, we can debate the merits on just how successful and how far set back the Iranian nuclear capabilities are, but no one is denying that it was a successful mission that took place that totally caught the Iranians, it seems like, off guard. I know there was some different reporting on that a week or so ago, but it looks like most of that has been debunked. And for now, we have more peace in the Middle East than we have had in quite some time, at least several years. So, yeah, of course, a ceasefire can end tomorrow. We all know how, sadly, that part of the world has operated for far too long. But that strike by those B-2 bombers, the timing of it, the success of it, to me, one of the great highlights of the first 6 months of this year. And number 3, maybe I'm being a little self-centered on this one, but when my fellow Villanovan Pope Leo ends up becoming the next pope, that was a big deal. Of course, the first American pope as well. And even as someone who's not a practicing Catholic, as a Christian, I am pulling for Pope Leo. We all should be. And this was a big deal on the world stage, right here in the U.S. And while we mourn the loss, of course, of Pope Francis, Pope Leo was by far one of the top stories of the first half of 2025. Now the lows, the 3 lows from the first 6 months of this year. Unfortunately, there were a lot of options. But at the top of that list, I will put the plane crash from January 29th of this year, when that American Airlines Flight 5342 collided in midair above the Potomac River with the Black Hawk helicopter. Of course, that flight was coming from Wichita, Kansas. It collided midair at 8:47 p.m. at an altitude of 300 feet. And it was all of a half mile short of the runway at Reagan National Airport. All 67 people aboard both the aircraft and, of course, the helicopter were killed in the crash. 64 passengers and crew on the airliner and the 3 crew on the helicopter. It was the deadliest U.S. air disaster since American Airlines Flight 587 in 2001. And this is obviously something we spent a lot of time covering at the time with the local ties as well. And also, we since learned the issues and the shortages with air traffic controllers, the lack of technology that they have that dates back in some cases to the 1980s, the overworked nature of those in that position, and also the crowded airways that are prevalent around Reagan National when you're trying to get these planes in and out of that airport, when there's obviously a lot of things going on when it comes to our nation's security. So this sadly seemed like it was a long time coming, and I know many of us have flown into Reagan several times, never thought anything of it, but that tragedy sparked an entire conversation that hopefully we are not forgetting about, and God willing, Sean Duffy, the head of the Department of Transportation, is going to continue to make the necessary upgrades to improve the safety of air travel in this country, which still is very safe. There's no doubt about it. Still very safe. But between that crash from Wichita and the near misses that have become far too common at airports around the country, this needs to be top of mind for this administration, and I think that it will be. Number 2 on that list for the lows of the first 6 months of the year, I've got the L.A. wildfires. That caused 29 deaths, 16,000 destroyed structures, 57,000 acres burned, and the total property damage estimated between $28 and $53 billion. And that doesn't even include some of the economic losses, decline in county-level GDP, wage losses, and things of that nature. But the images, the videos from those fires, especially the Palisades and the Eaton fires, which were particularly destructive, are going to be the videos and images that will last, decades from that fire. And they still, in too many cases, have not come close to rebuilding. There's obviously the economic fallout. There's the loss of life fallout. There's also the political fallout, if there is any, for Los Angeles. That remains to be seen. But those fires were catastrophic. You had 200,000 people evacuated from their homes during those L.A. wildfires. And number 3, when it comes to the 3 lows of the first 6 months of this year, from a national perspective, I'll keep it in Los Angeles with the anti-ICE protests that began last month. And it's not just about those protests. Overall, they were relatively mild compared to the Summer of Love 4 years ago. But what they sparked around the country, including the No Kings protests and some of the other protests that happen around the country, really is what made this the spark for more nationwide protests, the anti-ICE protests, as they were dubbed, that began in Los Angeles in the last few weeks. And you did have, dozens of businesses that were looted, losses estimated in the millions of dollars, and the national conversation that came out of those riots that began last month in Los Angeles. But for now, it seems like things have calmed down. But those are my 3 lows along with my 3 highs from the first 6 months of 2025. I'll give you the Kansas City edition of that coming up at 9:05 on KCMO.